Okay, so this week we're going to look at tsunamis. And so as you go through the tsunami module, you will have a PowerPoint to look through. So here's the file itself, and once again, this is a short little video that kind of summarizes and walks through the tsunami PowerPoint. There's a couple additional videos here, so this is just a small, short little simulation of how an early warning system for tsunamis works. And this is also a video, these are both on YouTube, that just show the impact that a tsunami can have. So it's real life, tsunami footage, which we don't always get a ton of that. So you can kind of look through there just to see what tsunami may look like. There is the article here that'll talk about the Japan 2011 earthquake and tsunami. And then there's a video from the MCC library that just covers tsunamis in general for the video this week. And then for the homework, what I'm going to have you do is look at the Indonesian earthquake and tsunami that occurred in 2004. And so once again, they're in two different formats, so you can use whichever one you're comfortable with. And when you open it, it'll look something like this. And so you will need to use Google Earth and the KMZ files that are in the homework there. And so like you've done for other Google Earth exercises, you will have to download these files and then you will open them in Google Earth. And then it's going to ask you for some information by checking and unchecking some boxes and working your way through some of the information that's provided in those KMZ files. In addition, there's a couple links for you to go to answer several of the questions here. So there's those two there, and I think at the end here, here's one here to help you understand the difference between these terms when it comes to tsunamis. And the last one is just to take a look at some NASA photos of the differences before and after the tsunami. But what I want to show you too about the homework is when you're working through Google Earth, so let me jump to that really fast. And so here's Google Earth, and I've got both files imported, the KMZ file. So one says Boxing Day, and the other one is this travel time. And so to start off, it should show up that the travel time isn't active, but if it is, you'll want to uncheck it because it covers this area here, and so we want to turn that off until we need it. And so when you come back up, what it should look like is there's a few things checked in the Boxing Day tsunami. These two icons here and this source event. So it starts off with the source event. So remember, if you double click some of these things, it should take you to that location. So it says to go find Indonesia, but sure enough, here it is. And it's just going to ask you to, tell me some information about the event itself. So this was the main earthquake. And so some information about when, where, and all that kind of stuff, magnitude. And then it's going to ask you some questions about different seismic events that have occurred. And so it'll ask you in the handout to check or uncheck boxes or enable boxes. So there's some additional seismic events. So if I check that box, you can see that show up. And so you can check and uncheck those things. There is a box to determine where people were impacted by the tsunami, where people died. So if you check this box, you can see that the red are locations where countries were impacted by the tsunami. So it'll ask you to check and uncheck those. And of course, you can go here and look at that information. If you check some of these, it'll tell you some of the information there. So check and uncheck stuff, because if you leave everything checked, it gets kind of busy. There's a plate tectonics we could turn on and off, so it gives us boundaries, and the little key is here so we can determine what type of plate was responsible for the earthquake. And then the one thing I did want to show you was there's this thing called run-ups. And so this is where a tsunami has hit the coastline, and it's going to give you some information. So in the handout, it'll ask you to distinguish between run-ups and inundations. And so really it's a vertical distance and a horizontal distance. Like how far inland did the tsunami go from the coastline? Did it go in a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles? And then what was the height of the wave basically relative to sea level? So we can get that information there. So I know this is a small window here. I'm going to enlarge it just a little. But there's a couple places that I ask you to go look for. And so instead of typing it in the search bar up here, as long as this run-ups is checked, if you do a search here, it'll look through whatever is active. And so there are a lot of locations here. And so if you just type in the locations, and there's just 2, it tells you the names to place in here. It'll automatically search and highlight that for you, so you don't have to go searching for each and every one. So that's a good tip to finding those locations. You're going to do a little rates and distance kind of thing, so there's a little bit of that rate formula in there. And then the final thing is eventually we do want to turn on this travel time. And what you'll see is that it's starting from where the source event was. It's telling you where the tsunami wave was after a certain time. So each dark line is an hour. So after the event, this is where the tsunami was after 1 hour, 2, 3, 4, and the dark lines are 5. And so there's a couple questions where want to know how long did it take to get to 2 locations. One was way down here. I'm going to turn off a few things to make it not so crowded. So this run-up stuff here. But you want to make sure that these 2 locations, South Africa and Cambodia, because it's asking us. So of course, double click to go find it. And there's a little icon. I think yours is actually a little house. But we want to know how long did it take roughly to hit this part of South Africa, right? And so we can figure that out by counting these little lines here. And then find out how long it took to get to Cambodia. With those pieces of information and the distance, which we know we can measure, we can figure out a speed. And so that's some of the calculations that it's going to ask you to do in the handout. So that's the homework. It shouldn't be too crazy as long as you kind of use those tips and tricks. It should go fairly quickly. But if you're still having some confusion about that, of course, feel free to contact me and we will figure out what's going on with that. Otherwise, that should keep you busy. And here are the 2 KMZ files that you'll download to use with Google Earth. All right, so good luck this week.